Our big question this week is this the wake-up call that is needed in the leisure industry market following the announcement from Swift that they've made a pre-tax loss in their accounts up to 2024? Is this a time to adapt? Is this a time to consolidate? And does the industry need a bit more evolution and a completely different look at how it operates going forward? Let's unpack this and more in this week's vlog. Welcome back to the channel, and this week I want to explore what has really gone on with Swift, and that this has been brewing for some time. So as has been reported in the news, and if you've taken a look at Swift's financial accounts on Companies House, they have reported a pre-tax loss of just over £4 million in the financial year up to August 2024. What is interesting though is that their turnover has also dropped. They're down by £21 million compared to the previous year. So a turnover of 300 million this year to around 321 up to August 2023. So turnover down, profits down. What is coming out from Swift then is that their touring caravans and their statics and lodgers have taken the biggest hit in their business. Motorhomes and campervans seem to be holding their own, but remember, this is reporting up to August 2024. Now, we have reported on this in our vlogs over the last 18 months, and it is common knowledge that a number of dealers have suffered over the last 2 years, and we've lost some big names along the way too. And that has resulted in some dealer defaults on paying for the credit lines that they have with the vehicles through Swift. Now, you could argue then that Swift are now a victim of their own systems and structures. They're reporting that that is accounting for a big part of their loss up into that 2024. But these dealers have struggled to repay back on some of those credit lines, and that has had a big impact on the industry itself. So it's easy to blame the dealers, but they are only working to the rules that Swift have set. I think the other thing to note, and again this is something we've reported on through the year, is that the price of motorhomes from Swift has increased considerably, and we've been quite astounded by this to see how quickly it has risen. When you look at something like the Escape range, for example, that's now punching around the £90,000 mark, is an Escape from Swift at the same standard and level of a motorhome of £90,000, say from a Bursner or an Adria, really that comparable? And it's put it in what was only a couple of years back the Contiki price band. It was the money you were paying for Contikis. And I'll come on to this a little bit more in this video, that the differential between some of these vehicles is not that great. And I want to explore what you're really getting for your money. And this also could be a crucial factor here for Swift in the, the attractiveness and the variation in the vehicles that they've got. And I want to explore that both across caravans and motorhomes. So one of the issues I've got with Swifts right now, and I'm not talking the Ascari or the Carrera end of their campers and motorhomes, but with their Voyager, Escape and Contiki ranges, the fundamental habitation part of those vehicles is pretty much the same. And I'm going to show you what I mean by that, and this is where I think there is an issue. Your fixtures and fittings, so your fundamental makeup of your cabinetry, your kitchen cupboards, your fridge freezer casing, the doors, the sliding doors, your shower trays, the beds, the wardrobes, the fundamental components that make up that interior fixtures and fittings is pretty much the same across the Voyager, Escape and Contiki. Now, I get from a business perspective and a build perspective, they're building in bulk, they're only machine cutting certain parts that can be applied to all vehicles. But when you've got a Voyager priced up in the 70s and a Contiki pushing the 120s, is there really £50,000 worth of difference in the adornments and the extras that are put on to badge them one or the other? I don't think there really is. And do you really want to accept some of the build quality that comes with that on those top-end motorhomes compared to what are now classed as the entry level? So there isn't enough difference between them, and there certainly isn't enough difference in the quality of them, full stop. So you go into a Contiki, yes, they've got some slightly different cabinet fronts on the wall cabinets. It's still the same kitchen. You get a higher spec grill, oven. You get the extractor. Yes, you get a bigger engine on the Fiat cab. Yes, you get the Alder. So there are these extras, but some of it is just the fake leather, the trimmings, the fixtures and fittings, the soft furnishings inside. But I'm not convinced it's £50,000 worth. And I certainly don't think there's enough differential between all three for where they're trying to position them in what is a highly competitive market. So let me pick up on the quality then. You will know from following our channel that we bought a Swift Escape 694 back in March last year. A year on, just under a year actually, it's gone. And that was a conscious decision for us to sell it and get into a different vehicle. And as much as we've owned Swift products in the past, and my dad had several Swift caravans that were all very good, there's a notable, I guess, shift in the build quality once you're in them. And I think buying the Swift Escape was probably the biggest mistake we made. Hands up, we shouldn't have done it. I was dead keen on wanting to go back to Swift, and I guess was taken in by the look and feel of it to begin with, but the reality was somewhat different. So we found very quickly that things like driving along in it was incredibly noisy to the previous two motorhomes we've had. The creaking and the rattling was just off the scale. And we also noticed that the fit and finish and the alignment of a lot of the doors and the drawers was off. The door to the bathroom from the living space, that kept popping open. If you weren't exactly perfectly level, it would just pop open. That would then rub on some of the wooden parts, and we would find sawdust on the floor where the door was rubbing. We found that table was just an annoyance, and we've done a whole separate video on that. It's just too big for the space. It looked great when you're looking around it in the dealers and at the shows, but the reality is it just didn't work in that space. It just isn't adaptable enough. And one half of it is too close to a bench, so you can't even get your legs around it. The seat cushions, too soft. They very quickly settle down. We also found that the sliding doors between the bedroom and the washroom, they would easily come off their rails, and they rattled no end when you were driving. And again, the bolts that went up into the ceiling with that, they were starting to come loose. The shower screens wouldn't fit properly. Some of the Alder pipes, again, the screws that were fixing some of this stuff to the walls are just so small and so tiny, they're not getting a grip. So we found some of the Aldi pipes started to come away, and we had to rescrew them back in. So living with it didn't live up to the look and feel of it when we first saw it in a showroom. And I think this is part of the problem when I was explaining that there isn't that much difference between the Voyager, the Escape and the Kon-Tiki, that when you look at them closely, walls move slightly, they're so thin, they rattle a lot, and that's going to apply across. And you only have to listen to some of the other YouTubers when they're driving along in their Escapes and Kon-Tikis, you hear that loud banging and crashing and creaking that's coming. We certainly don't get that from the Adria that we've bought, and we certainly didn't have it in the Auto Trail or the Bailey that we started with. So there is something about the build quality and the fit and finish that just doesn't feel as good as it should have been, and regretfully that's why we did get rid of it. There we are. So I think you read the vlogs, there's a lot of people talk about build quality in these vehicles, both in Swift caravans and motorhomes, and how they're being treated by Swift in terms of warranty work. I can see why we jumped out before we got into too much of that. Oh, and that was the other thing, we had our habitation door needed repairing, and we had a few panels pop off as well within the first couple of weeks in our first trip. So yeah, conscious decision, we jumped out, and we certainly wouldn't go back to a Swift in a hurry. So I think Swift as it stands, they're trying to cover a lot of bases with those motorhomes. So you've got the Ascari, the Voyager in the 4 Series and the 5 Series. So if you don't know, that 4 Series Voyager pretty much is what the Swift Edge used to be. Then you've got the 5 Series Voyager, the Escape they've moved up a bit, and the Kon-Tiki at the top of the tree. So they're covering a lot of bases there with not a lot of difference between them. So there's an issue. And this applies to the caravans too. And I think this is where Swift have got the bigger problem. And I think this is where the downturn in the new caravan market is having an impact on that bottom line for them. Is they've just got such a broad range of caravans. So you have 9 model ranges in the caravans, from the Sprite to the Sprite Grand, which is the extra wide 8 foot. You've got the Challenger Exclusive, which has replaced all dealer specials. You've got the Base Camp. You've got the Sprite Compact, which is their little Diddy caravan. You've got the Sprite Exclusive, so another variation on the Sprite range. You've got the Challenger Grand, which is the 8 foot wide, and then you've got the Elegance Grand. Wow, quite a mouthful and quite a lot of caravans. Now the issue with this is like the motorhomes, the fundamental shell and the fixtures and fittings across those ranges are the same thing, and they've just decked them out and equipped them in slightly different ways, and again different fabrics and soft furnishings and styling and the graphics on the side to pitch them at different price points. I think they've gone too far, and I think in a market where there has already been the downturn in the caravans, in the new sales, I think this is where Swift really need to take some action, and I think they could consolidate their ranges a little bit here. Now, with some of those grand models, particularly in the Challenger and the Exclusive and the Elegance, you are pushing at quite a price point. Do Swift really need to be in that space? There are alternatives to that offer a lot better quality, a much better and fresher design, because these designs of these have been around for a while now. There's nothing radically new about the caravans. I think they really need to rethink this range, and I think there is a place for the Base Camp, but they've had mixed success with that. You know, they expanded it, they got rid of the 6 berth one, the Base Camp 6, so that didn't last very long, and it has had a bit of a refresh kind of part way through its life. I can see the place of the Sprite Compact, because that's a lightweight, small 2 berth caravan, but we're a bit mixed across the rest of the range, and I think this is where they perhaps need to just rethink what their model lines are and who they're appealing to. And remembering that, you know, vehicles are changing that tow. I'm not saying everybody is a fan of EVs. We are. They work for us. If the right EVs were there to tow a caravan, I wouldn't be averse to that in the future. But I think there is a place for more affordable, lightweight tourers. And we've gone to a space with some of these where they're trying to throw so many gadgets and gizmos on them and ramping that price up, you know, pushing 50 grand for some caravans. I think it's just too much for something with a Swift label on it. And I think this is where they need to start if they want to kind of recover the tourer market. And to a degree, they perhaps need to rethink a little bit of that with the motorhomes as well. Their habitation bit hasn't had any big radical change for some time. So is this the point to look at both the motorhomes and the caravans and think, what can we do here? And how do we put them into their more distinct markets with their more unique features that make them differentiated from each other? So you know there's an issue with these. There's some great buys for you if you're looking at a caravan now that's 12 months old or less. Some of the dealers out there have got them, and you're probably paying £10,000 less than what the list price was for some of those higher end vehicles. We also know there's a lot of discounting been going on with the motorhomes, so this is clearly having an impact on the bottom line as well. That's manufacturer led because they pretty much set the prices. 2024 models got a lot of discounting for those that are still kicking around, and there's been a lot of price reductions on the 2025 stock. And whilst we've had this headline figure of £4 million loss, just remember that takes us up to August 2024. So I'm going to be fascinated to see what this dearth of motorhomes that we've had coming through this 2025 season will have as an impact on the bottom line for reporting this time next year. I think it could be deeper than what we're hearing now. So I hope they're going to take heed from this, and it gives them the wake-up call they need. They're not alone. Across Europe, UK, and on the continent itself, the caravan sector has been struggling, and there's a lot of factors behind that. I guess the post-pandemic world, the oversupply, the pricing, it has had a bit of a rough ride, and they're having to think about what they do. So Swift, though, first one up with those results. Let's see what the other manufacturers show us in time. So interesting times at Swift. Our next vlog will be one around the market, so I'll give you a July update, and then we'll also share with you our trip that is taking us to Warwick Racecourse. We're going to have a go on the Caravan and Motorhome Club site there in the middle of the racecourse near Warwick. Quite excited about that one. It's one we've not tried. So that's a little summer jaunt before we go off on our European travels. As ever, I want to thank you for tuning in. The recent likes and new subscribes have been very much welcome, and it's a pleasure really to put these together for you. I am going to be keeping a close eye on the market as we go through the rest of the summer, particularly as that weather out there has been picking up. Let's see if that has any positivity out there. And stay tuned. Lots more to come this year. So thank you, myself, Andy and Jamie, the two guys, two dogs, four wheels. See you soon.